Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Friday, February 21st. I just completed a video. I was going to put this audio at the end of the video. I talk about how, in the introduction to that video, I talk about how there's so many things that are like messed up about our system, so many things that need fixing, and things that can't be fixed. Like it's impossible to fix it. And I, made the video title of the videos about how you're trying to give pharmaceutical treatments, symptomatic treatments to a zombie. Like, there's things going on with the zombie's fingers and, whatever it is, right? And zombie has a cavity or filling the cavity, but you're not turning it back into a human being. It's still a zombie. And so that's what we're doing. We're just fixing little things here or there. And so I want to, let me start with this one comment first, because then I had a meme I wanted to address. And so here's the comment from yesterday. Man, period. You talk too much. Period. These comments are kind of the best because nobody's forcing you to listen. Like, this is my job where I talk about things. And some people find value in it. But if you don't, there's an off button. Like, it's just, I get these comments every once in a while. I talk too much is what? Like, this is my job. I was talking. Like you're saying that to a radio DJ, you talk too much. Like, this is, my job is communicating through language and making, video clips about it. And so, I would agree with it because my voice is often under some strain, but that has nothing to do with your complaints, right? So that's kind of great. But, in that, there was a meme I saw this morning, and I went back to get it. It was gone. It was on Facebook. It was something about how it had the term controlled opposition. It had a picture of Russell Brand and Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and I think RFK Jr. and Trump and Joe Rogan. And it said controlled opposition. Maybe some of the, had like a menage of these guys. What's a menage? Not a menage. What do they call it? Muriel? What are the things that we used to make? Montage? I don't know what it was. Not a montage. We used to make these things you cut out for little pictures in magazines. And, I used to like doing that. Like, I wouldn't do it now, but it was kind of fun when I was a kid. Anyways, whatever that's called. Don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. I can look it up. It's not worth my time. It's whatever that thing is. And so they have these different pictures of these people. I was thinking about this whole idea about controlled opposition and who's a shill and who's not. There isn't a plan like people think. I used to talk about this quite a bit. I don't think I've talked about this in years. And so in the Skull and Bones secret club, these guys go out into the world and they get basic training on their modality of, world dominance or whatever it is, right? So Skull and Bones is these elite level kids, George W. Bush and John Kerry, John Kerry became Secretary of State, George Bush was president. They were in Skull and Bones at the same time. And they were running against each other. One is a Democrat, one is a Republican. But they belonged to this secret organization that they were asked about it, and neither one of them would mention it or call it or say, you're not allowed to talk about it, right? First rule of Fight Club, you can't talk about Fight Club. And so they couldn't talk about it. And, there's 14 kids or 14 students, male students that are admitted every year. It's where the CIA came out. They have this little secret club there, 322. It's a little club, and they confess their sexual secrets. They lay naked in a coffin and confess their sexual secrets and all these other things. And there's a movie called The Good Shepherd. Somebody urinates on Matt Damon while he's in the coffin, and then he has to dress up he's dressed up like a girl in a play. And, they say Bones Man, yes or no. When he's introduced to being a Skull and Bones person. And then from that, he invents the CIA as a Robert De Niro movie. And so, there's this training that they get, and then they don't have any conversations. Like they don't have some secret meetings where they decide what to do. They just all know what to do. They can all just say, they can see the game for what it is. And that's the best way to do these kind of things. Whenever you communicate about them, the risk of getting caught is bigger and bigger. So the best way is to train people, where everybody is on the same page and they understand what to do and what the, eventual goals are. And then just little updates, ways of communicating things in a way that isn't, where they can have plausible deniability in a very abstract way, right? And so, this idea that these guys all have these meetings and they talk about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, that's not what happens, right? The less people that know about it are the better. Like whatever these secret society type of things that go on that control this Illuminati kind of stuff that controls things. The less people that are told the plan and are only told a piece of it, the better this chance of success of the plan and the less likely you're going to get caught. And that's for any criminal type situation, but anything like this even more so. And so the way that they control all of us, and they do control all of us to whatever extent, is there's rules, social norms, and gatekeepers all along our life that are guiding us in the right direction. And we can be oppositional, defiant, we have problems with authority, and we push back. But they have a way of breaking you. Ultimately they can throw you in prison or something like that, if it gets to that. But they have a way of sort of breaking everybody and having people conform through social pressure more than anything else. And then, lures like, money and threats, threats and bribes, these kind of things, right? Where they, there's a reward and punishment system. And it guides everyone to participate in the system and to knuckle under with a lot of rules and, unspoken rules and things, taboos and whatever, things that are taboo. And so, to call people shills or call them controlled opposition, it implies that they are, they are somehow connected and given instruction. And, oftentimes they are given instruction, but they're not even aware of it. I think Trump doesn't understand that he's part of this thing. I don't know how much he understands he's part of this controlled opposition. I think it's more that he thinks he's doing this. And then people buy into their roles. That's the other thing. It happens for all these undercover, covert operatives, Stockholm Syndrome, and they just buy into it. And so the bottom line for any of these people listed and for all of us is, are we doing good in some way? And what's the outcome of our work? And a lot of that can't be judged. It's certainly the spiritual aspect, because there are some things that have to happen, destructive things that nobody wants but are part of God's plan. And so when people who are villains do things that bring down a system, and you blame those people and you say they, whatever it is, but they're just doing, they could be higher developed souls that are playing that role, and they're doing what God wants them to do. And therefore, we don't really need to get caught up in all that kind of bullshit, right? Like if you understand this principle that sometimes higher developed souls come down as villains. I talked about this in the Mahabharata. There's this character called Shishupal. Krishna is the incarnation of Vishnu, and Vishnu has his team of souls. These souls that are around him, and they do work for him. On a spiritual level, in the spirit, the world of the etheric worlds. He's the god of preservation in the Hindu, religion. And not just, for that religion. It would be, if it's true, it's for everybody, right? If it's just a bullshit religious belief and he doesn't exist, that it's just for that religion. But if it's true, and, there has to be consciousness, there's consciousness behind everything. There's etheric energy behind everything, including things like destruction, creation, and preservation. And so there has to be a divine essence that's behind preservation, right? There's a soul that's behind. And it's a position that you can graduate from, and then some other soul takes that job, right? There are these jobs that people do. They do for, the divine essence, for God, right? They fill these cosmic roles. But anyways, believe it or not, this soul's up there. And one of the souls, he said, the Vishnu soul says to one of his sort of devotees, followers, souls that work with him, you can come down 10 times as my friend, You can incarnate on earth 10 times as my friend or 3 times as my enemy. And the soul doesn't want to come down to earth, so it says, I'll come down 3 times as your enemy. And the third time, he comes down as this character, Shishupal. And Shishupal's mother is a devotee of Krishna. She really loves Krishna. But Shishupal hates Krishna. And, Krishna says, well, since says to the mother, because of your love and devotion, I'm going to give your son 100 chances, but I'll let him insult me 100 times. But then after that, I'm killing him, right? Because he has this disc he pulls out, this cosmic disc that he has that he just uses like as a weapon. And Shishupal comes into this court area. It's kind of a great scene in the movie. And Krishna says, today's your day, Shishupal. He's on 97, so he's insulted Krishna 97 times. And he says like 3 things, he insults Krishna 3 more times, and Krishna cuts off his head. But when he does that, he liberates that soul. And that soul, like he wasn't killing the guy, that soul was, came down 3 times as his enemy because there needed to be this role played. And, because he could kill this person, he liberated this soul so it didn't have to come back and be born again on earth, right? Because anybody Krishna killed was liberated. So there was kind of an interesting dynamic, right? So it looked like they were, he was doing them a disservice, but he was ultimately liberating them. But, there is this divine drama that plays out on earth, and sometimes villains are heroes, and, it's none of us can say, right? We can comment on what Trump is doing and what Tucker Carlson's doing and what, Biden was doing and Kamala Harris and, Alec Baldwin. We can talk about their shitty characters and things that are, what we see them doing. But in terms of their relationship with God and what role they're playing, it's just between them and God, right? And that's why being judgmental is just a pain for you. It's like, it's unnecessary, it's wrong because, they're doing whatever they're doing, these souls, on a soul level, and they're playing whatever role. We're all playing a role here, and we have something to work out, right? So it's really a matter of whether we're doing what God wants us to do or we're doing something beneficial or, are we making the world a better place in one way or another? And there's no way to judge that. I mean, people can say, to me here, your videos, they make me feel good and, they've helped me and I've learned things. And so for some of you, it's like you benefit from what I'm doing here. And so that's good. That's some feedback. But there's other people who aren't, they don't like it, so it's, but on a deeper level, like who knows spiritually what it is, right? You just work and you do your best to remain pure and, ask God for connection and, ask God to help you to find your path and do a good job, right? Help you do a good job and fulfill your purpose. But on a more mundane level, like in the truth community, some of these people hurt the truth community more than others. I would say Alex Jones probably hurts the truth community the most. Now, Alex Jones played a role, especially years ago, where he was a landing spot for people who are waking up, and he was like, an entry, sort of a gatekeeper to the truth community. But he's done more damage than good. Whatever good he's done, whatever he's helped people, in terms of the waking up process, he's done more damage than good to those people because he's he's definitely controlled opposition, whatever that means. I don't know about someone like Russell Brand. I mean, I don't listen to him. He's okay. I guess I've heard him a couple of times. His voice kind of annoys me. It's not for me to say, right? What their effect is on the truth community. This idea of controlled opposition. They aren't organic, pure truthers, and they're, celebrities first, right? They're part of the club first and foremost. But then they have these roles to play. And, I think Joe Rogan does a good job with his interviews. Like, I like listening to some of his interviews. Some of the stuff I don't, a lot of it I don't need to hear. Some of it's not of interest to me. Some of it's just flat out wrong. But, he's a good interviewer. Like, he does that. Tucker Carlson could be a good interviewer. And he's had quality guests. Like, Alex Jones used to have quality guests. And so he was better than he is now. Now he's just a mess over there. And, for what reason, did the youngin buy his fucking thing? It still has it. He's still out there pushing his, his shit, his tangy tangerine and all that bullshit, right? And now that Trump is president, it might all reverse itself. Like Alex Jones might not have to, they might be able to win on it. Who knows what happens with all that stuff? We'll see. if it goes up to a federal level. I mean that those rulings were like ridiculous. The amount of money that they the whole thing. But anyways, so I want to talk about that a little bit. Whenever there's a movement, there's these purity trolls who want to be make sure that the in this case the truth community remains pure, and they're the arbiters of who's a real truther and who's not. We know how. I mean, anybody who's famous, they're certainly not going to be a pure truther because they're compromised by their success and their fame and their connections. But like it's still better than them not being, right? It's better than them being some, liberal piece of crap, unless they do damage. And there's people are like Pied Pipers. But anyways, the next thing I want to talk about is, wow, BD says when the gates of hell will open, as they surely will. And I started off talking about these extraterrestrial, UFO type things. And the person says it's Project Bluebeam, Paul, holograms, fake aliens. Well, you don't know that. Like, that's another problem with the truth community. You listen to somebody explain to you some narrative, and then you take that as fact when it's certainly not fact. Like I know that there's been, for me, I know, just because of the overwhelming evidence and all the sources that I trust and my own experience, and I know that there's etheric life, there's life outside of the planet Earth in terms of, disembodied souls that don't need an atmosphere. So life is, I understand, I've had experience of the soul. And so, like, with that comes this idea of, life being, that physical life is an illusion. And, there's just can't be one planet with physical life. And there's all this evidence that there's higher developed beings that were here, higher developed civilizations. And so, there's that. And so the Project Bluebeam, like, if you believe if in the Christian teachings, then all aliens have to be demons, or at least the interpretation of the Christian teachings. And so that's going to prejudice you against believing that there could be extraterrestrial life. And if they do come down, they're demonic, and that's going to be problematic because of the, there's so much like bad. I've been talking about the Bible in my last video, 2 videos ago. Not the video I made today, but the one before that. But, people who are Christian can believe in giants because it's the Nephilim in the Bible, but they can't believe in extraterrestrial, like it's just, whatever. Like it's just so limited and all these things. But, there's things that we can't prove to other people. And then we have to assess, like, on what level do we think we know something? Like, is it 100%? Is it, we're pretty sure, it's like with coin toss. But saying to somebody, hey, Paul, it's Project Bluebeam, fuck. It's just, you should respect that what I do here is not about that kind of shit. Where you've heard this I know that there's a Project Bluebeam theory, like all the New Age bullshit that you're not going to believe in either. There's all these theories that people have. There's all these people who think they know this or that. And some of it might be accurate, but most of it's just shit people made up and then other people repeated it. And then it becomes, like when you lose faith in the official story, but you want something else solid to hang your hat on, and you just go with that, right? Like, whatever you believe is fine. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, at some point we're going to see whatever it is. And, we never see the full spiritual reasons for things. The divine reasons, the samskaras, the plan, the, divine catalyst for things. Like, but we just see the way things play out on planet Earth. We see the plan playing out on planet Earth. And maybe at some point, we'll see it. Maybe we won't. It is whatever it is. Like I said, our beliefs and opinions, they cause problems for us and other people, but they're not, in terms of the final outcome, we don't get a vote. Like our opinion doesn't matter. It's either true or it's not, right? Like I say that with past lives. Either it's true or it's not. Souls. Either we have one or we don't. They're not provable. Like, you have to figure out your way of integrating information and into choosing what you believe, right? Like I have a system, the Sajmarg method of connecting with the heart and praying and meditating and opening yourself up to the internal explanation, and information just comes to me, and I just accept it. And the only problem is I might misinterpret it, or I might not be able to handle the full truth. Sometimes we can't handle the full truth. We all can't handle the full truth. The full truth is, would make most people crack mentally. It's too much. The essence of life, the mysteries of life, the reading the Akashic records, it's beyond our ability to comprehend and deal with, right? So we get little pieces, we get what we can, and we get what we need when we have to make a decision. But, we have choices to make, and usually we have more than enough information to make the right choice. It's just really a matter of we want to make the right choice or not. I've talked about that in many videos. Anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay. Saturday the 22nd or 24th? 22nd of February. I think there's going to be mostly funny stuff here. Let's see.
None whatsoever until they clean that up. And the other one we have...
the clips I'm going to show you. At least I have a funny, I feel like, like laughing. Like the stuff that I remember these clips, and I don't remember all these things, that I post, I keep on my toolbar. But the ones that I do remember are all things that I chuckled at. And, Trump has got, it's not as good as his first term. It's never going to be as good as his first term because of all the sucky shit he's done and all the shit he's doing now that's going to lead to our inevitable demise, which I was talking about how, recent videos that he's just doing God's work. Like he's just taking down a demonic system, whatever. Like, so, I'm not all mad or hateful towards him, but it isn't as funny as it used to be, but it's still funny. Some things are. This one, it definitely is.
Have a fight with one news organization, AP, a radical left organization, treats us all very badly.
So, first of all, they don't treat you badly. Like Trump is one of the funny things about Trump. It is very transparent because it drives the liberals nuts. Is that he is a complete asshole and says mean things and does shit that causes a reaction, right? He provokes people. And he, he would say mean things to people and Rosie O'Donnell, remember all that stuff, something like as an example. And then when they say things back to him, he's like, oh my God, you're so nasty. Why are you so mean to me? Like when Trump says this thing, why are you so mean to me?
Radical left organization treats us all very badly. And they refuse to acknowledge that the Gulf, former of Mexico, is now called the Gulf of America. So,
that's funny, right? Like, that whole thing is funny. Like, that part is funny. Him changing the name, unnecessarily so. Because who gives a shit, Like, why does it need to be called the Gulf of America? Like, it's just so narcissistic. Like, the narcissism of America. Like, we're already, we've been dominating for years. We've been the, evil empire for years. And Trump wants more. Like, wants more fucking promotion, more... I want to be the Gulf of Trump, right? You just, his big ass name that he puts everywhere, right? It means something to him, but it doesn't mean anything to, the average person. Who gives a shit? It doesn't affect me one way or another, but I'm probably going to call it the Gulf of Mexico because, that's the way I've learned it, right? It's hard to make these adjustments. Gulf of America, I very seldom going to say that, right? I went there fairly recently, but I have only been there a couple times in my life. And so, it doesn't really affect me one way or another, and most of us. But it's just petty. And Trump is very petty. And that's not treating him badly, right? It's just him changing something and people not fucking digging it because they don't dig his shit, right?
We just hold them, we're holding them out of any news conferences. Right now, I'm sure.
Which is, again, petty, but I said he should do this years ago. Because the mainstream media, I said what he ended up doing to win the election, again, I think it's rigged, it's all rigged, but, if he had something that won the election, whatever way that you would think the election could be organic, is he went out, he interviewed with podcasters and people who actually, the long-form conversations and He did Joe Rogan, these other people, based on he said his son Barron or whatever. And those are the people that you should have brought in, like they're doing it now, because those are the people that the demographics you want to reach watch. And going around to the internet people who get a far more, not only are they getting more views, but they're getting people who are, more into their content than the traditional news. Like CNN and MSNBC and Fox is just dead. It's for zombies and dead people and people like me who mock it. Occasionally there's a big news event, so you turn it on for that. But other than that, it serves no purpose. And, he's finally realizing he doesn't need AP or these news agencies. And so it's such a petty thing, right?
They'll get sued, and maybe they'll win. Doesn't matter. It's just something that we feel strongly about. No, and I said we changed Mount McKinley. Nobody's fighting that. You're allowed to do it. Well, we're allowed to do. And most of the shoreline is, 85% of it is on our soil. But I thought it would be appropriate. I never understood quite the Gulf of Mexico when it really covers us far more. And I think Doug is a big believer in what we did, the Gulf of America. So we're having a little dispute, but only one. But Google Maps has already changed. Almost everybody's already changed. It's called the Gulf of America.
Yeah, it is. And I said so. Because I couldn't call it Gulf of Trump. Okay, so we have CPAC here. And we have the fake Christian Barbie truther and her fake Christian Barbie interviewer. And this continues here.
Let's talk about the Gulf of America.
Woo! Look at her mouth. What's this, her mouth here? Okay. Let's see her mouth right here. Like, oh, it's crazy. I mean, isn't it so great? See, this is for stupid people. It's for people who, stupid is not, it's the lack of consciousness or lack of the ability for abstract thought. Because it's just this fake patriotism, right? And America as a narcissistic entity where you identify with, like, well, America's great, so I'm great, and we're great. And America isn't. Like, we're an evil empire. We're eating other people's resources. And, we're not great people. Like, comparatively to other countries, Americans are, there's good people. There's nice Americans. There's always kind people, nice American people, in any country. But America is very arrogant, and we're very arrogant and very entitled and very bratty. And so, in terms of the quality of the people, usually when I meet people from other countries, I'm like, oh, they're better than Americans. Like, just in terms of being nicer, more hospitable, more polite, more mature. Like, we're immature. I mean, like for myself included, like I'm not good socially. And so like America, just all this fake shit, like Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico. I mean, it panders to stupid people who buy into this stuff, like sheeple who buy into how great America is and how great, all this stuff. Great, there's an idea that America's this chosen country, chosen by God, and we're the chosen people. Like, it's stupidity, right? Who gives a shit? But the reaction by AP and the reporters, well, let's get into it here.
Okay. So, tell me what happened with the AP. Give me what's going on here.
So,
it's just us, right? It's just us. Okay.
well, I really
No, it's not. You're on the internet. And
would love to answer this question, but upon driving over here from the White House, I actually learned that I have been sued by the Associated Press.
Oh, that means, okay, we cannot. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, personally?
We'll see them in court.
Wait a second. Personally?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
See, this is what these people do. It's
Yeah.
called
these people. Who are you calling these people?
lawfare. You can't say it. I'll say it. It's called lawfare, people. That means I'll probably get sued in the next 30 minutes or so. Okay, keep going.
So I wanted to get the White House counsel on the phone before taking this stage to see what I can and cannot say.
You really can't say anything.
But look, we feel we are in the right in this position, and I said in my first briefing at the podium, we are going to ensure that truth and accuracy is present at that White House every single day.
Woo! Like when you said that 50,000 condoms went to Hamas, the Hamas holes, right? When you said that, like, and then Trump said that they used them to make bombs. Let me show you I got a meme of that now.
In that process, we identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs. How about that?
And
Woo! Woo! Truth and
And
accuracy.
one of
woo!
the changes that we made, President Trump ran a non-traditional media strategy on the campaign trail, and he owned it, and he did.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, he got to the party late. Like a lot of these people, these podcasters and people, famous people. I have this, I think it's up here. I'll find it if I don't have it up already. But Tucker Carlson interviews Megyn Kelly, and they talk about this. In fact, I'll find that next because it's segueing into that. Those of us who were here organically, not just as creators, but as viewers, like we recognize this was the next thing. Years and years ago, 2005, 2000. I was watching this stuff and creating content in 2007, and was absorbing my news. This is where I was getting my news in 2004 or 5. These times, right? This is where I was getting my information, and people are now, it's, and not that it's like some badge of honor to be here first, but it isn't like he's organically a part of this, right? You either helped create something as a viewer and a content creator, or both, in my case, right? You either participated in its creation, or you're somebody who's a pretender that comes in late and takes advantage of something that already exists. But what Trump is good at is, he's good at, we'll save that until we go to he confronts the governor of Maine. Let me go to that next, and then I'll go to the Tucker Carlson thing with Megyn Kelly.
Podcast, the Theo Vaughn podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast. He went places that no other politician has ever wanted to go, and it helped him earn votes, it helped him earn support, and we wanted to continue that approach with the White House. So we've added the new media seat in the White House briefing room.
That's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Woo!
Are inviting podcasters and influencers and independent journalists who aren't constrained by this legacy media bias to join.
But they're completely biased toward Trump. Like, they're not going to have people that would ask Trump questions about, and again, they're not going to answer the question, so it's just, the whole thing's pointless, right? So the AP is fighting over this thing. The AP and MSNBC and CNN and all the rest of them, and this isn't just for Trump, this is typically what happens, is they ask questions they're not going to get real answers to. It's for news that nobody gives a shit about because it's just talking points, right? So, Trump is a little bit more, when he gives press conferences, he's a little bit more, forthcoming with information. He says shit you're not supposed to say. But even then, they don't, they hate Trump, and they're going there to shit on him, and they're going to ask him questions to, gotcha questions, which she's not going to respond to because she's actually kind of good at her job, despite being annoying and fake. Like, she's good at doing this. And so, she's just going to give you this rah-rah American bullshit, fake patriotism stuff that she says, about Trump. And, they just go around and they do this dance all the time. And we saw it with the last press secretary and that guy from Fox News, whatever his name is, douchey. Little douchey there. Not the older douchey, the little douchey. And so, it's the whole thing's just like an absolute, like, who wants to do that, right? Engage in these conversations that are not real conversations where nobody's telling the truth, and then covering it like it's fucking news, like the whole thing's silly. So then there's this here. There's some more about this here.
Yes, sir. I want to ask you a little closer to home. What would it take for you to reconsider the restrictions on the Associated Press? And secondly, some of your advisors are concerned with the Associated Press's style guide, using language and giving guidance to not use words like illegal immigrant or to use phrases like gender affirming care. And they're concerned about that being an encroaching on liberalism in the way in which the press writes about things. Do you share those concerns?
Well, I do think that some of the phrases that they want to use are ridiculous, and I think, frankly, they've become obsolete, especially in the last 3 weeks, because many things.
Because, Trump is Trump, and Trump, and Trump, 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 and Trump. There's a couple things Trump's good at. I want to point out two of them. One with this, and then going into the thing with the governor of Maine. I want to point out the other, which we'll get to. I think it's the next video up here. Trump is good at, one of the things that Trump has done here, and I don't know how much he's conscious of this, but the American people, even a lot of the liberals, who are very conscious of not wanting to appear, racist or homophobic. See, one of the issues with the liberals were that when this thing came out about transgenderism, they thought, the way that white people were on the wrong side of slavery, when there was these obvious, this is where they were, the obvious right position was to be, pro-integration and, not prejudicial and things. But they were just trained and growing up in this idea that white people were superior, that these liberal people who think if they were back then when slavery was going on, they would be on the right side of it and they would be against slavery and against racism. But the truth of the matter is these people are all sheeple. And most people don't go against the grain, even in the way that they think about things. Or at least they don't want to appear to be, against things. And so when this thing came up with transgenderism, they were like, well, we're going to be on the right side of history. That this is just like slavery and some of these other, racist, traditional racist, policies and social constructs. And they didn't really think it through that it wasn't like it at all, right? This wasn't something that people were prejudiced against, something that was based in birth. This was something entirely different. You had people who were claiming that they felt like they were born in the wrong bodies. That's something completely new and different than everything else, right? Where they're claiming that they are a woman stuck in a male's body. And it's different than all the other letters, the lesbians, the gays, the whatever it is, the LGBTQ stuff, all of them. It's completely different. They're different. What's going on inside that person is different than whatever goes on inside of other people. It's a legitimate thing. I mean, it's real for them. And it's something that isn't something new. You can trace this back historically, that this happens to people, that they feel like they're actually a different sex than their biological sex. It's not, it's a rare thing. It's not so rare now because the liberals are pushing it. And now they're creating people who don't have that to pretend they have it, and parents are pushing their kids to have that because it's like a liberal parents because it's a badge of honor for them. But at some point, I said this thing about just let it happen. When these liberal parents were watching their biological daughters get their asses kicked by biological males in intramural sports and things in their towns and their high schools, that they would start feeling a certain kind of way about it. And that these liberal women, like the lesbians and the feminist women, when they saw biological men stealing their thunder, which was already started to happen, that they would realize they were on the wrong side of this issue. And they were afraid to speak out. But since Trump has won, they now are, if they're not speaking out about it, they're at least, they're not speaking for something they don't believe in. And a lot of this liberal bullshit that we were putting, it was just too far. Like you could say back when the Republicans and the conservatives were in the world, I mean, slavery is a horrible thing. And they did it. There's bad things, not letting women vote, right? When the conservatives were, running the show, they did shit that was obviously wrong and should be, easily reconsidered. But then it swung the other way, and the liberals were the crazy ones because they had the power, and they were pushing for crazy shit, right? But now that Trump's won, all those people who were, definitely seeing it had been pushed too far but didn't want to speak up about it aren't trying to prevent this wave of conservatism sweeping across the country because they knew that the liberals went too far, right?
Things have happened in the last 3 weeks, and I didn't know about that, but I would say that if they want to use certain phrases like that, and I guess some are okay, but many aren't, but the Associated Press just refuses to go with what the law is and what is taking place. It's called the Gulf of America now. It's not called the Gulf of Mexico any longer. I have the right to do it, just like we have the right to do Mount McKinley, and nobody's even challenging that. But only essentially it's primarily the Associated Press, and I don't know what they're doing, but I just say that we're going to keep them out until such time as they agree that it's the Gulf of America. We're very proud of this country, and we want it to be the Gulf of America.
Again, that's just stupid shit. American pride is just a stupid thing to have. There should be no pride. Only in the sense that, there should be self-respect and accountability and, like some level of, I guess, integrity. I don't know what the words would be. That would be a substitute for pride. Pride is one of the 7 sins. It's like a bad thing. Pride is always irrational. It's more often than it's narcissistic and arrogant and not true. And not unnecessary in this case, but funny.
Of America. Now, the Associated Press, as you know, has been very, very wrong on the election, on Trump and the treatment of Trump. And
the treatment of Trump. Who is this Trump that we're speaking of? Trump and Trump.
The things having to do with Trump and
let's listen to that all.
Wrong on the election, on Trump and the treatment of Trump, and other things having to do with Trump and Republicans and conservatives.
The Trump and the election of Trump and all things to do with Trump and Trump.
And they're doing us no favors, and I guess I'm not doing them any favors. That's the way life works. But
that's the way life works, in the land of Trump. And so, the other thing is that he got Cash Patel, and so they gave Trump everybody but Matt Gaetz, who imploded and was taken out by the Republicans. So I didn't think they would get RFK. I mean, some of this stuff is, kind of, I don't even know why that's happened. Like, I can't explain it. Like, I don't know why. I guess it's because the liberals and the Democrats couldn't block it. But, the Republicans fell in line. Even Big Pharma didn't push them to. And that makes you think that Kennedy isn't going to do a lot of the things that would affect Big Pharma because they have such a strong lobbying group. But anyways, let's go to the next thing here. So this happened.
the NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Are you not going to comply?
His eyes look weird. Look at him. Look at his eyes. It's this whole thing right here. The Batman Robin mask thing.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
Well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics. Every state has a responsibility to
That was great.
comply with Title IX. They have an obligation, a legal obligation, and we'll be enforcing aggressively, and we're going to be protecting our citizens. We're going to
All right. So,
protect. The NCAA has complied.
so here's the thing about that, right? So there's two things to do with Trump here. The first one, he's good as a salesman to sense, he's good at understanding the mood of the country and understanding his audience and what appeals to people and pandering to them. And again, he fucked us all on this thing in 2016 in his first term because they rolled this thing out during Trump's term and he didn't fight back against it, right? This whole thing with gender stuff. And he screwed everybody in the truth community and the right-wing people because he was the catalyst. They pushed all this stuff through because people were so freaked out about Trump, and he didn't do anything to push back against it. But then he realized it was a winning issue for him. He had that one commercial, and he's pushed it forward, and the liberals don't fucking get it. Like, this woman doesn't get it, that the majority of people see that this is a real fucking problem, that it's just a no-brainer that biological men should not play sports with biological women. It just shouldn't happen. Like, no fucking sane person would say that it doesn't matter what a person feels inside of them. What if an adult says, I feel like a child, I'm going to compete with toddlers, like 6-year-olds in soccer, and some big, adult male is out there, like, playing soccer and kicking the ball and making kids cry and hurting kids, right? Like, it makes no sense, right? That if by that logic you could say that you identify as something inside yourself, whatever it is, and that's real. And they started doing this where they were putting doggy bowls down in schools where kids were saying they identify as dogs. There's things were happening. It was just fucking batshit crazy. Whatever a person feels inside, you can't pander to them. What had happened was that the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual, changed gender identity disorder to gender dysphoria. So they said this is no longer a psychological disorder. That happened in 2012. And that gave this movement life. And then Trump gave it more life by being Trump and freaking out the liberals and giving them a reason to push back and get active, get all these people active and push for something. And there was this money and power behind this because there's people and money and power, the Freemasons and the various, the people who run the modeling industry in Hollywood and these Hollywood morality, they believed all this stuff all along. They believed this stuff that you're now seeing, that we've been seeing the last 4 years, that there's all these various genders, all these things. That was their inner kind of stuff, their secret, stuff that they believed in. The pronouns, all these things. They were already there. And they were just waiting to force it on everybody else. But the rest of America, the rest of the world didn't like this shit. Like, they don't like it. The majority of people, who aren't, like, stupidly just going along with stuff because they can't think for themselves. Which happens on both sides, by the way. It happens for Trump and against Trump. People just go along with stuff because they can't think for themselves. So I was covering this, like, whatever, I mentioned this. And it's 30 to 60% of people, depending on your definition, have the ability for abstract thought. So at least 40% don't. And then, the majority of people are not capable of higher level conceptual thinking. And you see it. There's a lack of understanding even the basic spiritual concepts. So people can't meditate on the idea of an abstract God because they, don't have the capability of imagining such a thing. That's why God was given to them as a man or as a powerful warrior or as nature or as Mother Earth or, something like this, right? Like this, people believing in gods because they can't understand an abstract idea of God as love, as an energetic essence that doesn't think, it doesn't have a mind or a body. They can't think about it like that. So if that's the case, you're dealing with a lot of, a wide spectrum of people's ability to conceptualize and understand things. And the majority of people just go along. So Trump saw that this was a winning issue for him, and he'll just drive it, he'll just push it to the edge where, like, there's going to be conflict. And this woman from Maine is taking the bait, and she's absolutely fucking screwed because the other thing that's going on here, the other thing I want to talk about, is the other thing Trump is good at. This is not going to save the country, but it's fun to watch. This is where he turns the screws on the liberals and Democrats, which is always good entertainment. I mean, it's not going to help anything, the disaster that's happening in America from happening. But like I said, it's fun to watch. And so what he's able to do is he's able to get people down in the mud. Like Trump is a filthy, and all this stuff with them talking about these lawsuits. Trump lived with a team of lawyers, and he was suing everybody. Anybody who said he was like trying to cancel people for criticizing him. anybody who claimed that he wasn't a billionaire. He sued this guy who was a reporter who showed that Trump wasn't a billionaire. Like he was worth maybe a couple $100 million. He wasn't even close to being a billionaire. And Trump sued him and lost, right? And so, and there was no reason for him to sue him, but there were these things like in his roast, the things like him being a slumlord, some of the things that were, him not being as rich as he says. You could say these horrible things about him, but there are some things that were off limits, right? Like you can't make fun of his hands, like the size of his hands. But, he's very litigious, and he was suing everybody. And so them claiming, that there's all these lawsuits. Look at how many lawsuits that are now are trying to stop Trump and Elon Musk, or Trump and, Trump and Trump and Trump and Elon and Trump and all these people from doing the things they're doing. But Trump's great at getting you down in the mud. Like there's some, teams and, various players who like to get, the game to muck up the game. Make it not about skill and, get it just to be physical and get it to be chippy and get it to be, to get you out of your rhythm and things like this. And Trump's great at doing that. He's getting people to fight on his playing field, but Trump is the bottom dweller in these kind of things. And he gets the conflict on where he has home court advantage. He's just really good at this, where he gets it down to this low-level consciousness. And he gets these liberals down in the muck with him. And they're not really good at it because they're liberals and they're, they won't go and say they won't use the language that he'll use, like the petty little nicknames. They won't go to his immature level, shit like Pocahontas and, whatever it is. Like Trump is, and he connects with all these people who don't have the ability for abstract thought and who are petty and immature and, they're limited in their ability to conceptualize and understand what's going on. And so this is the way that Trump wins. And it's kind of funny, but again, it ain't going to save America. Like it's, it's not, it doesn't have any other value other than entertaining. And some of these things Trump's right about, and it's good that they're coming to an end. Like he has done positive things because it was so batshit crazy that bringing this craziness to an end, of course, what he's doing with Gaza Strip is equally as crazy. So it's like with Trump, it's like, feast or famine. He's either completely on the wrong side of something and he pushes that through, or he's on the right side of something and he pushes that through. But, he's a doer. He gets things done. But oftentimes those things are, they're bad things. I mean, more often than not, they have, disastrous consequences. Okay, so I just took a nap. I've been going to bed a little bit late, but I've been sleeping really well. I had weird dreams last night. One involved an owl that I really can't remember that much about it. But anyways, I've been really sleepy lately. Just taking a lot of naps, falling asleep at watching TV, more so than usual. But here it is. Let's get back to it.
The future is independent, and there's just really no room anymore for the corporate nonsense that comes with being part of a huge corporation. So
this dude, Megyn Kelly, a.k.a. Nicole Simpson Brown, whatever. Nicole Brown Simpson. This is Tucker Carlson, and they're talking about independent media. And, it wasn't built for them. Now, I don't mind them being there. I don't watch anything from Megyn Kelly. A few things have popped up over time. And, Tucker Carlson, I mean, they're whatever they are. You want to call them shills. I mean, what I said in the beginning of the video. The, controlled opposition. It's a step in the right direction. Like, there's two things that I feel about this stuff. One, you always want to see a step in the right direction, even if it's not organic or 100% organic or pure. But Tucker Carlson has come somewhat, in terms of that. There's a video where the guy, Adam versus the Man, who I don't know if he even exists in the truth community anymore. And what he was, remember, he got arrested for loading a shotgun in Washington, D.C. and filming it. And he would serve some jail time for that or whatever it was. But he asked Tucker Carlson about 9/11. Tucker Carlson's like, come on, that's silly, come on. And then, of course, years later, Tucker Carlson actually apologized for that. And I don't know how much it had to do with me. Like, I don't know. Like, I think there was someone on Tucker Carlson's staff or his people that watched my stuff because he started using the word ghoul. It could be, that or it just could have happened organically. But I made a video, which I found that video, the clip. It took me a while to find it. It was an old clip of, Tucker Carlson was outside and he asked this guy, he was asked by this guy, Adam versus the Man, about 9/11, and Tucker Carlson, said this stuff. Come on, that's just silly, just stupid. He was really dismissive in an obnoxious way. And I always remembered that. That's how I defined that piece of shit, right? Like as a person. So I brought that up and I showed the clip. I don't know if anybody else did. I don't know where he clearly was reminded that he did this by somebody. It might have had something to do with me or not, but I had recently covered it. And he apologized for it. So, whatever, that's a step in the right direction. Is his apology sincere? Has he really made this change? Well, not really, to the extent that he's still pushing Trump bullshit. And, he's got to know that they all have to know that Trump's assassination attempt was bullshit. Like, how could they not know? Like, Joe Rogan was pointing out that he didn't have any scar on his ear. But then, pretended like, and Joe Rogan later on said that, Trump's the former president and was running for president. So you couldn't push back against him like you would, it was somebody else. So, but I assume they all know that Trump's assassination attempt was bullshit. And they're all pushing it, right? And so, thinking, well, this guy represents more of the truth than Biden does, like all these people. So whatever shills, whatever money's changed in hands, whatever handlers people have, whatever their point of view is, there is a step in the right direction. So you have to acknowledge both things. One, yeah, they still suck. And two, that they suck less than they did before, right? But this thing wasn't built for them because it's not really about people who used to be famous, who used to be a part of the problem, then using these platforms and redefining themselves, but still not being organic truthers, right? Which, it is whatever it is. Like there's some value in it, but some of it hurts the truth community.
America's now seeing they're doing somebody else's bidding. Like you've got to do what the Murdochs want you to do. You got to do what NBC Brass wants you to do. And look at me, look at Tucker, look at Glenn. Like there is zero chance that we could be saying the things we're saying right now if we were still on these networks. Can you imagine me?
So again, like it's them. Like they think that it's all about them, right? That's the problem. It's not about you. It's about the truth, right? It's not about your career. Again, this is a business. You got to make money. All these things. I'm a practical person, but at the end of the day, you're serving the truth, right? Like what I do here is, I believe wholeheartedly that there's a solution, and it's a connecting to the divinity within you, because of my experience with that. Like in the Sajmark system, to me, is the best method to do that. And so I wholeheartedly believe that, like as a solution, because it's made, you need to make better people, and it's made me into a better person. So like if you use a system and it works for you, then it works, right? And then you can endorse it. And I don't even endorse it. I just give information about it because I know it doesn't work for everybody because people aren't ready for it. It doesn't work for their egos. It works for their soul. It works for everybody's soul, but can you feel it? Can you experience it? And most people can't. Like the whole thing about the ability for abstract thought. But I'm serving something beyond myself, right? It's not my system. Like I wasn't the person who invented connecting to divinity within you. I didn't even like the idea of it before I started it. And even now I struggle with it at times. The process. But I know it's good for me. It's like, when you have a diet, like I take these cold water baths every day. Some days it's hard to get in the water, right? It's just, I'm not feeling it, and I don't, I'm not up for it, but I still do it, right? So, there are things that are beyond you, and we live in a time where shit's beyond your ego, right? Like things are like getting real out there, reels.
Still on NBC being like, a man cannot become a woman. Okay, good luck with that. Or Tucker having the conversations he is having. I mean, that's probably half the reason they got rid of Tucker, is because he was having forbidden conversations. So it's wonderful to be out of those shackles and just to be able to say what's real and not really.
Yeah, you endorsed Trump. Remember when she was being a dick to Trump, and he was saying blood was coming out of her eyes and other places.
Really have to give a shit about how people feel about it. Can I tell you, it's like been really fun for me because seeing him out there, greeting everybody, glad handing, it's just heartening because I know he doesn't think about himself like this, but they put him through the ringer at Fox News, and what they did to him was deeply unfair and disgusting.
Disgusting over there.
So I love to see him with the people, getting the love, totally on his feet, stronger, more popular than ever. It's just the whole thing is it's a loving FU to the industry.
I know Megyn Kelly really well, and I would just say a couple things about Megyn Kelly. She was at the company that we once worked for. It was a TV company based in New York City on 6th Avenue, and I got there after being fired
6th Avenue
from a couple of different jobs. And so I was like totally powerless and, disgraced, I've had many firings, but I was in between firings at the time. And Megyn Kelly was the dominant person there because she was the most talented person in the building, just like pure talent.
Pure talent. She had just 100% pure talent.
And Megyn Kelly, for reasons that I've never even asked her, I don't know the answer, went out of her way to help me. I didn't even really know Megyn Kelly, but Megyn Kelly went out of her way, and I mean out of her way, like at risk to herself, like in some meeting, I don't know that guy, he's kind of a buffoon. No, he's good, you should promote him. And I don't know why she did that. Well, I do know why, actually, because Megyn Kelly is actually a really decent person.
She's decent. She's so fucking decent. Just like Joe Biden was decent. These decent people, they're pretty decent.
I never was attracted to fame. If anything, it was a downside of becoming more popular in what we do.
See, this is the problem with any movement. It gets, bastardized. It gets compromised. It gets, what's the new thing that they're saying? Captured. It gets captured. That's the new term that RFK Jr. and those, foodie people are using. It gets captured. And that's why, nothing stays pure. It starts mostly with spirituality and religion. And then all these other things. Like there's pure movements. They start off organic and grassroots. And as they grow, they just get contaminated. And I'm not like against the stuff here. It's, because none of it matters because like I say all the time, the system's going to collapse. It's collapsing or already has collapsed. And, so most of this stuff just doesn't matter. Like I don't take it seriously, I have to be a purity troll, all that shit, right? Because, and so there's some positive aspects of it becoming, when something trends and becomes, trendy and becomes something the majority of people get to, it usually sucks because it's, the whole good thing about the movement is that the majority of people can't do it. They're not capable of doing it. And by the time they can do it, the thing sucks so bad. The QB thing and the flat earth thing and the right-wing Trumpers and the Trump stuff and all the things that have happened to the truth community to just water it down. And by the time it becomes mainstream, it's been dumbed down for the dummies, right? It's for dummies now. Something that used to be for people who were a cut above in their intellectual and their, morality and their capacity for, the desire to see the truth becomes just another thing for dummies, right? Truthism for dummies. Okay, so I just ate lunch and I was watching various news channels, and CNN and MSNBC were covering how Trump just fired these journals, and then the other networks, Fox was covering how Trump's first 100 days are being triumphant, and how he dressed down this governor of Maine, who is no treat if you see her, right? And so Trump firing the generals, these were so-called woke generals. And so for all of us in the truth community, and certainly all the right-wing people, it seems like that is a good thing, right? Like that's something that's positive, that they fired these people who are, pushing this woke agenda. But the other problem with this is Trump is putting his own people in, and, Trump's going full Trump. And I was surprised he didn't do martial law. He didn't impose martial law. He tried to a couple times his first term. And he broke posse comitatus, which is bringing the military in to deal with civilians. And they were already pushing this for the whole border crisis. So they're going to bring military troops and have them on the streets. It's like the Star Wars, the sixth movie in the series, in terms of the order they're supposed to go in, where they make the clone army, and they have the clone army, and it's been made by the Sith Lord, but nobody knows it. And the Jedi use the clone army as a way to, put down some rebellion that's a false flag thing, because they get baited into it. And then they have the clone army ready to go for the Sith Lord to come in and create an evil empire. So even if you don't think Trump's capable, and he totally is, of being a dictator and being an emperor, a evil emperor, he's setting it up for the Democrats to do that. Like all these things that he's doing, where the presidency can't be questioned, the president can't be prosecuted for crimes he commits while president, and martial law and posse comitatus are things of the past. And Trump's going to bring all these things in. And you say, well, I don't care because Trump's on my side. Well, he's not really on your side, but even if he was, it doesn't matter, because the next president could be liberal and they'll be able to use all the things that Trump has instituted or gotten rid of. And, it's set up to, they've done this before where they just copy him, or they just, do what he did, just the opposite way. Use his talking points, use his, whatever, because that's what they do. So either way, it's fucked. So, Trump's right to make it so that biological men don't compete with biological women. It's crazy for this governor in Maine, which is, all these crazy things that are happening out there, to block that from happening. But even if you get rid of that stuff, it just takes us back to where we were in 2014 in terms of that shit. And we're still, our country was already collapsing. Like, getting rid of all the Biden stuff doesn't stop what was happening before that, which is economic collapse and moral collapse and all these things, right? Certainly biological men playing against women in sports and this whole, gender stuff that was pushed on us is a sign of moral breakdown and, the kind of things that happen in the evil empire collapsing. But it's just a symptom to the zombification of the country, which I covered in my last video. It doesn't stop anything. Like, it doesn't fix the problem, which much of it was created by our bogus religion, our bullshit religion, and our debt-based economy, and, the right wing. A lot of it's the right wing issues that are now, the right wing has lost power, so the left wing is just reacting in a bad way to all the right wing bullshit. And they're creating their own nightmare, the crazy liberalism. And so either way, it doesn't fix the general problem of the human condition, right? People have to change. People just have to evolve and change. And that's not going to happen, right? Based on everything that's happening. There's no movement on that. Nobody's trying to do that. They're not even willing to listen to it. Anyways, so I watched this, I copied the CNN thing maybe 2 days ago, and I just remembered it. And it took a while for my phone to find my computer and do the airdrop, or whatever it was. But now I have it. Let's watch that, because it's kind of interesting.
More or less locked out of his office, unable to get his materials, unable to say goodbye to his staff, and was searching for answers as to why. Keep in mind, there is laws put in place that you're supposed to give Congress a heads up when it comes to whether or not you want to dismiss an inspector general. And in this case, that did not happen. Now, of course, there's been speculation perhaps that some were overseeing departments where Trump had financial stakes, or Elon Musk had financial stakes, or Trump just had bad history, for instance. In his first administration, inspector generals did, in fact, push back on some of what Trump was doing.
Okay, so first of all, this term inspectors general, like you would think the plural would be on the last word, inspectors general. And there are a number of them, and so I looked it up here. Inspector generals are independent and objective oversight officials within government agencies. Their primary role is to promote accountability, integrity within the respective organization. Here's a breakdown of the key functions. IGs conduct audits, investigations to assess the efficiency and effectiveness of the agency programs and operations. They examine financial records, program implementation, and compliance with laws and regulations. They investigate allegations of fraud, waste, abuse, and misconduct within the agency. IGs issue reports on findings, highlighting areas concerned and recommending improvements. And so this is a part of IGs play a crucial role in preventing and detecting fraud, waste, and abuse within the government agencies. So you can make a case that these epically failed, right? And so if you're a Trumper, you'll say, well, Trump is doing that now with Elon Musk, and they're getting rid of these independent people. The problem with this stuff is, and as we go through this, is that, there are a lot of things that are not supposed to be partisan, and they already are. Everything's corrupted long before Trump got here. But Trump is just like, such a prick about these things, and he's always been this way. Thinks he knows better and more, and he doesn't do deep research or understand the implications of his actions. And he just starts breaking shit, right? And getting rid of it, like what he's doing now with the government. And yeah, the government is full of waste, and he can point out some of the shit that he's getting rid of that we all agree is something he should get rid of. But there are a lot of things that he's doing that aren't that. And the denuded liberal media that hasn't really had any real power in years because nobody really watches them, and they can't do anything about it. And they've been probably told to stand down, as have the Democrats to whatever extent, and let Trump just break the fucking country, right? And he's going to do irreparable damage because he always does. He's a loser. Like, he goes bankrupt. He always fails. He's always on the wrong side of things. I mean, not always, but overall, he's self-destructive. And he's just taking a fucking sledgehammer at all these things, which is kind of funny, and it seems good, but it's not, right? Like, it's not, you don't want to get rid of things that uphold an independent democracy. And when you make everything one-sided, Trump's putting in a complete government of Trump people. And people who will not push back against him. And Trump doesn't like people who backtalk him. Trump doesn't surround himself with people who tell him the truth. Trump loves yes men. And that's unfucking deniable. Trump loves people that kiss his ass. Like, that's his number one criteria for hiring people. You're a good person if you tell Trump how great he is. And Trump will say, Trump needs Trump. Everything about Trump is Trump. That was one of, Trump said that. There's a saying, Trump is Trump. Like, he said this on The Apprentice, and it meant that, it was always the best and was always, Trump is like the premium. But the only person who probably said that was Trump or Trumpers, like people who worked for him, right? But, like, I never heard that saying. Trump is Trump, right? It was said by Trump and his people, his yes men. And so he's doing this really fucking dangerous. And if we weren't already going to shit, it wouldn't matter. It would matter more. But he is definitely bringing about the collapse of our civilization, and his dopey supporters can't see it, and they never will, until it's too late, and they probably won't even then blame him, because really he isn't to blame because our system was already fucked long before Trump ran for president.
But in terms of an overarching thesis about why these specific ones were fired, I have not yet covered one, or uncovered one, I should say.
So, Catherine, we have 8 of the inspectors general. They filed a lawsuit, and they have asked a judge to immediately reinstate them, arguing that Trump broke the law. The judge did not grant that request, but he didn't kill it either, right? So I'm curious what happens next in this case. How do you see the next steps playing out? And what law would they say that Donald Trump broke?
It's the Inspector General Act. Now, it's interesting, as Sam said, that Trump did not give notice. The law says the president shall communicate in writing to Congress.
Not must?
That's right. Lawyers fight every day about what's the definition of shall.
Okay.
Does shall mean must or shall mean maybe if you want to do it?
So this is hilarious because everything that I know about Trump before he ran for president, and I knew him fairly well from just, his persona and watching The Apprentice. And, he exposed the kind of person he is. And so really anybody who wanted to evaluate Trump would watch The Apprentice and then hear what they're saying behind the scenes of The Apprentice, that Trump wasn't really that rich and his office were in disarray and he was shitty at the show and he made impulsive decisions. All these things, track to what we experience with Trump. But anything you know about Trump is, the first thing is he's always looking for legal loopholes. He's always pushing the legal system and trying to find ways to get around it. Like businessmen do this in general, and Trump is one of his hallmarks of his character. And so if you have something that says shall instead of must, Trump's going to exploit the shit out of that. Like these things were made for Trump. There's a lot of bureaucratic bullshit and legal loopholes that Trump is exploiting every one of them. And if it doesn't work, he'll try a different way, right? Like this is how Trump does. Like Trump will find a way to do what he wants to do, which is, these things are in place to stop somebody like Trump. The Constitution is there to stop somebody like Trump, right? One of the things that RFK Jr. said when he was testifying before the Congress about censorship, he said that freedom of speech was supposed to be upheld even when it was people who were like Nazis or hate groups, and the ACLU or whatever it is that's in charge of that shit, which is a very liberal organization, had to defend horrible right-wing groups against their freedom of speech being violated. And all of a sudden, Biden and these people are saying, nope, you guys can't talk about the truth on the internet or what you think the truth is on the internet. And it was violating all of our first constitutional right. And so this was already up with Biden. And Trump is all about censorship, just not for him and his people. And so all these things are now up for grabs because, we've entered to a time where people don't appreciate the freedoms and the liberties that we have that are, like I said, there's no such thing as freedom, but we don't even know how bad it is in other countries. And Trump is taking a sledgehammer to all that shit, right? And yeah, he's getting rid of liberal and woke people, which on the surface looks good, but he's getting rid of the checks and balances at the same time. And so he's, going against the nature, the checks and balances, the part of that was written into the government. And that's like fucked. Like it's going to, that's a bad thing.
So that word shall the administration is going to hang on. So he shall communicate in writing 30 days before removal. He didn't do that. Was he required to do that? Did that break the law? And that's going to be the big argument. Shall does not mean must. That's where it's going to turn on the shall.
Does anything kind of come to mind? You have 8 that have filed the lawsuit, not all 18. Is anything?
No, they just probably don't want their names out there, like the 3 that there. And this could be as simple as Donald Trump wants his own people, period. These were the prior administrations. The one was a Trump appointee. It's just that I want all of my own inspector generals. They're supposed to be independent,
right?
But they are appointed by the president.
I was going to say, which reflects the last person from whom we heard, who said the administration does not want truly independent inspectors, is what he's alleging. So, Sam, the inspectors general in that interview, they highlighted how much Congress relies on them to find fraud, waste, and abuse, and they urged lawmakers step up on their behalf. Take a listen to what they said.
I think the concept of independent, aggressive oversight via in-house inspector generals.
So first of all, this guy says inspector generals instead of inspectors general. Because it's just weird to say it that way. Like, how old is this? Like, when do they make these things? When do they create these positions?
Is at a tipping point. And I think that this should be an alarm to all Americans, but in particular Congress. And Congress is the one, if they don't want to see IG's authority and value dissipate, they need to wake up.
Is there any appetite on Capitol Hill to push back on these firings? And if there isn't, what does that mean for Congress's constitutional obligation to oversee the executive branch?
There's none, right? You know, the Democrats have been, after what they did with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and all they've ever had, like, remember when I said this? I said this so many times the past 5 years. When they put Trump in jail, or when he doesn't run for president again, or when he disappears, call me. Otherwise, all this stuff is bullshit. All these things about them charging him with this, that, and the other thing. You know, the way that the lawsuits, all the stuff that they were doing. Ways that they were going to, stop Trump from running again. All this talk about January 6th, all this shit was meaningless because all they've ever done is talk about Trump for the past fucking 9 years. It's their business model. It's their go-to thing. What my go-to thing here is to talk about divinity within you, right? There's an underlying message. Their underlying message, the mainstream media and the Democratic Party, is Trump sucks. They don't have their own platform. They don't have their own ideas. All they have is Trump sucks. And he's been the center of their universe. They think about Trump more than Trumpers do. And they follow him around and, whatever, their hate cult of Trump, real or imagined. I'm sure they are, messed up over Trump. And yet they can't stop the fucking guy. Now it's for reals. And so the powers that be are pushing this. The whole idea that Trump is organic and he's some kind of an outsider. He's always bowed down before the banks. He's bowing the way he was bowing down before Israel. Like, he has his handlers, he has his people, and he bowed down before those people. Like, he's not some independent truth talker that talks truth to power. He knows who his handlers are. He knows who his masters are, and he bows before them. And those masters are giving Trump free rein to take a sledgehammer to the American government and all of that, all of it, all the other aspects of it. And, we'll see how it ends up, but it's not going to, they're not doing it so he can make America great again. Like that, they don't, that's not their goal. Their goal is Agenda 31 housing. And we know what their stated goals are. These people, they depopulate the world. They, bring in cryptocurrency and these things to erase, they're going to devalue the currency by, Bitcoin's going to go up to, it's maybe $1 million a coin. I watched this guy, Max Kaiser, and he's one of the, guys who was he was one of the first people that was sort of semi-truther, talked about weapons of, economic weapons of mass destruction. And he was a big Bitcoin person from the beginning. And he said there's going to be a point in the near future where America's just going to print like $1 trillion and buy Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's going to jump up like $100,000 just in a day, or whatever. It's going to double its value or something crazy. Because there's going to be significant recognition of these cryptocurrencies. And what they're going to be able to do is that put value into the cryptocurrencies that diminishes the value of the dollar, and then make everybody convert their money into cryptocurrency, and you're going to lose a shit ton of your, the inflation's going to be astronomical, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? And there's all these ways that they're going to, we know what their plan is, right? And it's going to happen, and, the plan isn't to bring America back to the way it was in the 1950s. That was never part of there's no way that's going to happen. They don't want that.
Sure. Well, I shall try to answer this question at this point. The answer is no, there's not really appetite. And the reason we know that is that the person who has been foremost associated with the defense of inspectors general, Chuck Grassley, the senior senator from Iowa, has been relatively muted. He's critical of Trump. He's saying he wants answers. But we know that he could do more. The reason we know he could do more is that back in the first Trump administration, when Trump did fire or attempted to fire a number of inspectors general, Chuck Grassley actually put a hold on confirming Trump nominees until he got answers. Chuck Grassley has not done that during this iteration. And I will note, look, it's easy at this point to roll over if you're a Republican for Trump. makes sense. They've been compliant for this whole month. But it's also fairly easy to see a future in which this comes back to haunt them. During the Obama administration, for instance, it was the Inspector General of the Treasury Department that uncovered what he alleged to be the targeting of conservative groups by the IRS. Now, it's a sort of controversial topic, but that created the foundation for a lot of Republican attacks on Obama. It created the foundation for efforts to root out politicization of the IRS. It created legislative efforts and so on and so forth. It was all done because there was an independent inspector general there. If they want to have a system where that's not the case, you can easily see in a Democratic administration where that comes back to haunt them.
See, one thing you got to understand is fucking Trump does not give a shit what happens in 4 years. Like, it's, he has whatever he thinks about the legacy, the Trump legacy, whatever. I mean, I'm sure he cares about that shit. But he doesn't care about what he leaves behind. And, he deals with things on that level, businesses or whatever it might be. He's always gone scorched earth when it comes to other people in the future, and he doesn't give a shit. And the people that run the system have an agenda, and they're using Trump to bring about that agenda. And it could go bounce back the other way where there'll be hyper-liberalism after Trump. We'll see how bad it gets. It's like a wait and see. Like, all this stuff is wait and see. The chance to change anything is long past. You can change yourself, but everything else is, it's already happened. It's already destined. There's no fixing it or stopping it. So I don't care about, it's the wrong picture here. Okay, here it is. I don't care about Nirvana. I don't like Nirvana. And I don't care about Courtney Love. But I dislike Dave Grohl. And one of my viewers sent me this. And Courtney Love takes a giant shit on Dave Grohl. Here it is.
Dave makes $5 million a show. He doesn't need the money. His mother's a banker. His father's a stockbroker. And he's making $5 million a show. He's in the Foo Fighters. Why the does he have a Nirvana Inc. credit card? And last week he bought an Aston Martin on it. I don't care how much more popular they are, because Dave knows that I know that he knows that I know that he knows that I know. All right? So he didn't write one note. He didn't even write the drum riff and Smells Like Teen Spirit. Kurt owns 100% of that publishing. Forget me. I make tons of money. My daughter, my mother-in-law, Kim Cobain, that's what I care about. Okay? Do you understand? So Dave.
So fuck Dave, right? Dave did this movie where they were in a haunted house and he was I don't know what it was, but there's some devil worship and shit. Just don't like the guy. Don't like his music. Don't like him personally. And so apparently he's making all this money, and yet he's still trying to sponge off the Nirvana legacy and royalties and things. But anyways. Okay, so I kind of think this is fake. I'm not going to play it, but there's a drone plane. It's not like us. And this seems like it's AI generated, and that's supposed to be Drake in his penthouse. And the drone is playing That's Not Like Us. And it's just funny because, although I think it's fake, just the idea of it's funny. But if that's true, and they got a drone to fly over to Drake's, balcony, and he had the door open, which is silly. And they're playing this song, like, him getting pissed off, that would be funny. So, I'm including here, but it looks pretty much one of these AI fake things. But still, it's creative. Pretty much anything I show you on Instagram is sent to me by a viewer. I don't really like Instagram, and I barely go on Facebook, and visually, I don't like Instagram, the size of the posts. And I don't have it. I don't even do it on my phone, right? But anyways, this is Chris Kluwe. He's a Minnesota Viking. Reminds me every once in a while I have to post something on Instagram. I have to sign into it on my phone and post something because otherwise they think the account is dead. But anyways, this is Chris Kluwe, who I kind of remember as being a linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings. And he obviously has some brain damage because he decided to do this.
Everyone is in favor of a plaque to celebrate the library, but the vast majority are against including a MAGA acrostic. Okay? Unfortunately, it's clear that this council does not listen. MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement.
Are you really that fucking stupid? Are you really that fucking stupid? I mean, this is in California. Now, he's going to protest and he's going to pitch a big fit here in a second. Now, he didn't do this for when there were drag queens going into libraries. This is just a little plaque on the wall. You know how I feel about MAGA and MAGA people. Don't like them. You know, they just suck and they bother. They're worse for us in the truth community than they are for all these people. But there'd be a little plaque that said MAGA on it, and nobody would care other than the MAGA people. It's not going to change anything. But, you know, whatever. But drag queens that are, you know, there's this Republican transgendered guy or drag queen guy that came out and said that the world of drag is filled with, like, you know, sexual stuff, like deviant sexual stuff. And there's no place around kids. It's not for kids. And this is somebody who does that stuff, right? And yet these guys were appearing in libraries. But more importantly, he called this a Nazi movement. Now, Bibi just came out, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said numerous times, Trump is the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. Trump just said that he owns Gaza now, and he's going to turn it over to the Israelis. And Bibi was like, you know, I mean, he was having a ghoulgasm over that thing that Trump was saying. Like, he couldn't believe how it was better than anything he ever predicted, what Trump was saying. He loved it. And so Trump's son-in-law is Jared Kushner, and Trump has all these business dealings and relationship with Jewish people and being in New York and these things. So how is it a Nazi movement? What the fuck are you talking about, right? Like, you just don't understand it. There's plenty of things to criticize about Trump, and some of that is his position on Israel and his, you know, his horrible position on the Palestinian people. And you're calling this a Nazi movement? You're like stupid. I mean, you took too many headshots. Like, what's going on here?
MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. You may have replaced a swastika with a red hat, but that is what it is. I will now engage in the time-honored American tradition of peaceful civil disobedience.
Get the heck. Get out. Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, so, you know, protests don't work. They're stupid. They're just like having a tantrum. And they always have the reverse effect, right? They always backfire. Unless the protest is being, you know, it's being created by a, you know, like some sort of power authority that is using the protest to push an agenda. But here's the plaque, and it's going in. Magical, alluring, galvanizing, adventurous. MAGA. Huntington Beach Central Library. And he's, you know, it's not going to affect anything. It doesn't change anything. And he's just wrong and stupid. Like, just, like, look at what Trump is. He's not a Nazi. Trump, if anything, he is, you know, I mean, if you want to call Jewish people or Israeli people Nazis, right? Like, a guy who bows down before them and does their bidding. Like, he's a, you know, one of his handlers is Israel. I mean, that should be clear to everybody. Like, how can you not see that? And so if you're not seeing that, then you're having a remedial grasp of what's going on around you. And you shouldn't be talking about it like you're just clueless. You know, lots of people give their opinions, and most of those opinions are just bad. Like, people just aren't good at it. You know, I did a video on my other channel. I got one more thing to cover here. But I did a video on the Golden State Warriors. It has nothing to do with true stuff, you know, and I should probably have even said that at the beginning. Like, I'm going to regret that because everyone's going to go, oh, sports are fixed, right? Because you do have to have conversations with people that doesn't involve truth or stuff. Like, not everyone I talk to, I'm going to talk about spirituality and divinity within you because, you know, it's just not appropriate. Like, there's no way to there has to be an opening to talk about shit like that. And I don't talk about truth or stuff with people unless, it's somehow they say something or whatever. There's some kind of shared thing. Like my chiropractor, and we, over time, you figure out, oh, this person's one of us, right? And other than that, you have to talk to people about other shit. When I talk to people about things, I don't say all the things I say here. I get paid to do this. So I'm not doing it for some fucking moron that will never understand it, right? So you have to talk about things that are like sports, for example. So I'm doing that a little bit on my other channel just because I need to, keep that channel like some kind of content there on my Apocalypse Laugh Stout channel. One of my viewers recommended I should talk about sports there. And I was talking about this whole trade that happened with the Golden State Warriors and how the majority of mainstream pundits all just say the same thing. And you see it in every field. People don't have original thinking and they don't have the ability to analyze things. So they just copy what other people are saying. They figure out what other people's opinions are and they just go along with that. And they make it sound like it's their own, but they're all just plagiarizing bad ideas. And that's all over the internet. All these people who leave comments based in other truthers. They hear something in the truth community and they just regurgitate it, but they don't understand it and they haven't thought about it themselves. Anyways, let's get to the last thing here. So, a couple more things to get to. This is from the London Daily. This is 60-foot Damien Hirst artwork installed on the banks of the Thames River. Is that what it's called? Thames. The demon with a bowl is his sixth work to be installed on the Greenwich Peninsula, making the riverside one of the best places to see art. It's a demon with a bowl. It's a headless fucking demon with a bowl. I went to England. There was a layover when I was coming back with my family from India. We were in India for 3 years, on and off. But we stayed, in that area. And we traveled back through London on a Virgin airline plane ticket. And we had an extra day layover because we missed a flight. It was a whole thing. And we drove through London and we went to some fucking castle bullshit thing. My kids wanted, we wanted to do some things. And we were driving through and there's this whole area where there's Illuminati, pyramid, Sphinx, shit that shouldn't be there. All these obelisks and shit like that. And there was other bizarre shit. And, why would you have a demon? What do they pay for this demon? It's probably quite pricey. And this is the guy here. That's the fucking dude making demons. Says here, the process led to a series of treasures from Wreck of Unbelievable, which is where the demon with a bowl and my other peninsula artwork come from. So they're dropping it right here. There's that thing right there. And, the river's kind of disgusting. They're putting it together in pieces here. Look how big that fucking thing is. And so, it probably cost them, millions of dollars for him to put the fucking demon in the middle of their, tourist area. Scientists capture end-of-life brain activity that could prove humans have souls. A mysterious burst of energy that happens in the brain as we die could be the soul leaving the body, according to an expert. Dr. Storth Hemoff, anesthesiologist and professor of the University of Arizona, recently discussed a study that captured the brain activity of clinically dead patients. He explained how researchers placed small sensors on the brains in 7 chronically ill patients minutes before they were taken off life support, allowing them to capture the activity after each patient's blood pressure heart dropped to 0. There could be a near-death experience, or it could have the soul leaving the body, perhaps. The thing is, the soul leaving the body is not, there's no scientific instrument that can measure that. Let me switch over to voiceover here. So, it's kind of hard to understand the soul because we experience everything through the third dimensional reality. And, we're breathing air, but it's hard, we can't see the oxygen. We know it's there because they can, figure out what's in our atmosphere and, in our air. Scientifically, at least they claim they can, right? Well, how do we know? But in terms of all those types of things, But something that happens, the soul exists in another plane of existence. Your soul doesn't exist here on planet Earth. It exists on another plane of existence. But it's also here. Like, it doesn't exist in time and space. And so a soul isn't bound by the physical laws. But your body needs the soul to animate it. But it's sort of like a video game where, there's the avatar in the video game, but you're controlling the avatar from outside the computer. You're looking at your screen, and the avatar exists in the video game. But you exist outside the video game, and that's how your soul is. And so there's no physical, the soul has no physical components. When they first described a soul in the ancient Vedas, they were like, well, it's something that can't be burned by fire, and it's something you can't see. There was ways of describing it. Because how do you describe something like that to people? Imagine the first person who realized, again, this happened in ancient India in terms of the modern day human beings, some 100,000 years ago, between 100 and 200,000 years ago. And the idea of the soul came to some dude, right? Or some woman or somebody, right? And that person had to tell other people about it, right? Imagine having to convince other people that you have some imaginary being inside you that's animating your body. Back in primitive times, where they, it was in India, so at least they weren't going to burn you alive. But if you did that, like in ancient England or some of these places before it was common knowledge, how do you sell people this idea that you have a soul? Think about doing that to people who'd never heard of it before. Like, how would you go about describing it? How would you go about talking about it? And so, I need to include this in my first, the 182nd edition of the Journey series. But you can spend your whole life meditating on your soul and, learning about it and interacting with it and never really understand it. And to the extent that, only a fraction of what you could know about it. And that makes it interesting, right? Because it's on a different level of existence. And science is always trying to, people who believe in religion and believe in the soul is always trying to use science to prove it. And it's a silly thing. It's nothing you can ever prove. It's either, you either experience it. It can only be experienced. Like, you can never see God. Like, you can see the effects of God. Even the transmission that's given in the Sajmark system, you don't feel the transmission. You feel the effects of the transmission on your system. But the idea that God is subtle, it's really hard for people to understand, right? Because everything's so fucking gross and people love drama. When somebody says in their, Facebook has these different categories for relationships. I don't know if they still do this, but it probably do, right? Whatever, I don't think they changed this. And one of them, it's complicated, right? Like, you would put it's complicated. There's a movie with Alec J. Baldwin, and I think Meryl Streep called It's Complicated. And when people say, because I was watching a movie where it was called Greedy People. Movie sucked. That kid who was in 30 Rock, or Third Rock from the Sun, who's grown up. He's usually in good movies. And he's pretty good in the movie, but the movie's supposed to be like a dark comedy. And, spoiler alert, everybody dies. Like in ways that it's just, it ceases to be funny. It was maybe funny in the beginning. But he's meeting a new partner, they're cops. And he says he's in love with a woman, but it's complicated. And he's learned Mandarin because this woman only speaks Chinese. And he's banging this Chinese guy's, she's married to a guy, Chinese guy. And he's banging this woman. And that's what he means by it's complicated. And, when you are dreaming about, especially for young women, for girls dreaming about their ideal husband, when you're dreaming about your potential marriage, when you're fantasizing about your, life partner, your, who you're going to marry, and your relationship, you never think, I hope it's really complicated, right? I hope it's so complicated. When complicated is never a good thing, right? Like when you buy something, if you're going to buy something from, what's that store? Whatever, that furniture store where you can get Swedish meatballs. that place. Would you buy something that you're going to put together and says it's really complicated? When you're buying something you're going to have to assemble, so a kid's toy for your kid, it's really complicated. Oh, great, it's fucking complicated. Well, I can't do that, right? And so complicated is never good. But in the Sajmark system, God is subtle. God is the most subtle of anything in the universe. And so, you look for subtle means. This is some of the teachings, one of the primary teachings of the Sajmark system. The means to interact with God has to be equally subtle. And for you to experience God, you have to become subtle. And if you're very complicated inside, which most people are, you can't feel God because you're disconnected from your heart, and there's too much complications that are gross and heavy that you're barring your ability to see and experience the divinity within you. But you're never going to see God. You can only feel God. You can feel it, and feeling as a way of intelligence, using your heart to feel. Your heart that's not emotions but feeling. The difference between feeling emotions, to experience emotions, and feelings, which are love and compassion and higher level stuff, higher level subtle, it's more subtle. And it's never going to be rock solid materialism because God isn't materialistic. God is in everything, but God, you have to penetrate to the deepest levels of anything to experience the divinity within it, right? And so you're never going to find any proof of a soul for those reasons. Very interesting teachings. Something that I really value in the Sajmark system is that it's a very simple method. You meditate and do cleaning. You use your mind to connect to the divinity within your heart, and you just let your mind rest on your divinity. And when thoughts come in your way, you treat them like uninvited guests, not too forceful, just, then you tune back into the divine energy, the divine love in your heart, and you just focus on it. And eventually your mind settles down into that level of experience. Like first your thoughts are there and you're busy, but eventually after some training and some time, you can settle down into it. But it takes effort on your part. And people want drama. They want complications. They want it's complicated. Some egotistical need for demonic, low-level, low-brow fucking dramatic sensationalism, sensory status, right? Like I dated this girl for a while she was so fucked, was just messed up, like in terms of like dramatic, like psychological issues. And, there was like constant, like just basically breaking up. And you see relationships like this, if you've experienced it, you're breaking up and getting back together. And there's a lot of excitement in that, because the breakup's exciting. There's a lot of energy in that. And the getting back together is exciting. And so people use that as a way to keep things exciting and keep people addicted to the charge you get from starting something new or ending something. And so, it seems like it's something that's like you're enjoying, but you're really not enjoying. But like something where you have a good, stable, loving relationship where it's simple and subtle and there's no drama, and it seems boring. And only till you don't have it do you appreciate it. Like that's what they say, that distance makes the heart grow fonder. And that's the sad thing, where people need to be separated or have the risk of losing something to realize how much it means to them. People can't value it. It's like I talk about prevention. Like you don't value prevention until you have the problem. And you're like, I wish I prevented it. I wish I had done things differently. Well, you can. Like you just have to see that other people are suffering, something like cancer, and then, live a lifestyle that won't include, that will help you prevent getting from cancer. And then you can appreciate it going, wow, all these other people have cancer and I don't. But you'll never appreciate as much as a person who had cancer, who gets the cancer taken away, right? And that's just a sad state of the human affairs, that we need gross things. We need over-the-top stimulation instead of just being able to be happy with the simplest, subtlest aspect of things and be able to appreciate things that are not complicated, right? And so, there you have it. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse. and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.